Richard Milhouse Nixon was born on January 9, 1913, in a modest farmhouse in Yorba Linda, California. His parents, Francis and Hannah Nixon, were hardworking and deeply religious Quakers who instilled in their son strong values of thrift, discipline, and perseverance. Growing up in a home without electricity or indoor plumbing, Nixon's early life was marked by simplicity and self-reliance. The rural surroundings and strong community ties laid the moral foundation for his character, shaping the quiet intensity and tenacity that would define his political career. Nixon's childhood was shadowed by both financial hardship and personal tragedy. Two of his brothers, Harold and Arthur, died young from tuberculosis, a disease that devastated many families in the early 20th century. Nixon worked from an early age in his father's grocery store and gas station, waking before dawn to deliver vegetables and returning after dark to study by oil lamp. These formative experiences forged in him a strong sense of duty, emotional restraint, and an unshakable desire to overcome adversity, all of which would later drive his political ambition. Nixon enrolled at Whittier College, a small liberal arts school close to his hometown, where he became a standout student in debate, drama, and student government. Unlike many of his peers who came from wealthier backgrounds, Nixon paid his own way through school, often taking odd jobs to cover tuition. He founded a student club, the Orthogonian Society, as an alternative to the elite Franklin Society, reflecting his lifelong identification with the underdog. Graduating in 1934, Nixon left Whittier with a reputation for intellect, persistence, and a deepening passion for public service. Determined to rise above his humble origins, Nixon won a scholarship to Duke University School of Law, one of the nation's top programs at the time. At Duke, he was known for his intense study habits, intellectual discipline, and quiet demeanor. He rarely socialized and focused relentlessly on his studies, graduating third in his class in 1937. Though he struggled to find a position at a major law firm during the Great Depression, his experience at Duke sharpened his legal mind and gave him the tools to navigate the complex political world he would soon enter. In 1942, Nixon joined the U.S. Navy during World War II. Although he did not see frontline combat, he served with distinction in the Pacific Theater, managing supply chains and logistics operations in the Solomon Islands and later in New Caledonia. Known for his efficiency and administrative skill, Nixon's time in the military gave him leadership experience and a new sense of confidence. He returned from the war with a Bronze Star and the respect of his peers, credentials that would lend him credibility as a congressional candidate in the years to come. Encouraged by local Republicans, Nixon ran for Congress in 1946 and won a seat representing California's 12th district. His campaign capitalized on post-war anti-communist sentiment and his identity as a returning Navy officer. Nixon's energetic style, aggressive campaigning, and hardline anti-communist rhetoric earned him national attention. In Washington, he quickly became known for his tireless work ethic and keen political instincts, laying the foundation for his rise through the Republican Party. Nixon's national breakthrough came with the Alger Hiss case, where he helped expose a high-level State Department official accused of being a Soviet spy. Despite fierce resistance from the Washington establishment, Nixon pursued the investigation relentlessly, ultimately leading to his conviction for perjury. The case made Nixon a household name and a hero to anti-communists across America. Though it alienated some in the political elite, it cemented Nixon's image as a tough and fearless fighter, qualities that would define his future campaigns. In 1950, Nixon defeated Democrat Helen Gahagan Douglas in a brutal Senate race often remembered for its harsh tactics. Nixon accused his opponent of being pink down to her underwear, implying communist sympathies. The campaign earned him the nickname Tricky Dick from critics, but it also demonstrated his strategic acumen and willingness to fight fiercely for political victory. As a senator, he continued his focus on foreign policy and national security, building a reputation as one of the Republican Party's most effective young leaders. Chosen as Dwight D. Eisenhower's running mate in 1952, Nixon became the youngest vice president in over a century. His famous Checkers speech that year, defending himself against accusations of financial impropriety, saved his place on the ticket and showcased his emotional appeal to average Americans. As vice president, Nixon traveled extensively on diplomatic missions, notably clashing with Soviet Premier Khrushchev in the televised kitchen debate. He developed expertise in foreign policy and became a leading voice against communism worldwide. In 1960, Nixon ran against Democrat John F. Kennedy in one of the closest and most consequential presidential elections in U.S. history. The televised debates exposed Nixon's physical discomfort and emphasized Kennedy's charisma. Though Nixon had years of experience, he lost the popular vote by a narrow margin and the electoral vote by a handful of states. The defeat was bitter, and Nixon felt the media had been unfair. It marked a moment of reflection, but not the end of his ambition. Attempting a political comeback, Nixon ran for governor of California in 1962, hoping to maintain national relevance. However, after a lackluster campaign and another defeat, he delivered a now famous concession speech declaring he was leaving politics. "You won't have Nixon to kick around anymore." The press and political class largely dismissed him as a has-been, but Nixon remained quietly active behind the scenes, observing a divided Democratic Party and waiting for the right moment to return. In 1968, amidst a turbulent national backdrop of war, protests, and civil unrest, Nixon made a triumphant political comeback. Running on a platform of law and order and a promise to end the Vietnam War with honor, he appealed to the silent majority of Americans. Nixon narrowly defeated Democrat Hubert Humphrey and third-party candidate George Wallace, proving his resilience and ability to adapt. His victory marked the beginning of one of the most complex presidencies in modern U.S. history. Nixon's second term was defined by bold and historic foreign policy achievements. In 1972, he shocked the world by visiting the People's Republic of China, ending decades of diplomatic isolation. That same year, he traveled to Moscow to meet with Soviet leaders, where he signed the Saltai Treaty to limit nuclear arms. These moves redefined Cold War diplomacy and elevated Nixon to the status of a global statesman, showcasing his strategic brilliance on the international stage. Despite his foreign policy triumphs, Nixon's presidency unraveled due to the Watergate scandal. The break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters and the subsequent cover-up efforts led to a constitutional crisis. With mounting evidence and political pressure, Nixon lost the support of Congress. On August 9, 1974, facing almost certain impeachment, he resigned from office, becoming the first and only U.S. president to do so. His departure marked a somber chapter in American political history. Richard Nixon died on April 22, 1994, at the age of 81. He was mourned by leaders across the political spectrum who acknowledged both his failures and his accomplishments. Though his presidency ended in disgrace, later historians have reevaluated his contributions, especially in diplomacy and environmental policy. Nixon remains a symbol of the contradictions of power, deeply flawed, yet undeniably influential. His life and legacy continue to provoke debate and reflection among Americans and scholars worldwide.